Well, Paul, welcome to the program. Thanks so much. Congratulations on the new job, General Manager of Policy and Advocacy. What's your path to this particular role?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I guess going from the start, grew up in the Waikato on a dairy farm just outside of Te Aomuru. Went off to the University of Waikato, and I've worked at Fonterra, Ministry of Primary Industries. I worked in international policy there, actually, and I was for 5 years. I was involved in the negotiations that ended up being the Paris Agreement on climate change. So we got some good wins there around food production and the importance of that. And then since then, I've worked at Dairy NZ, but also I've done a bit of time working for the National Party. Worked with Simon Bridges and Judith Collins in their leadership. So I've worked a little bit on the dark side of politics as well, so I can bring a few different perspectives to Federated Farmers: that Fonterra corporate perspective, the ministry perspective, and also the political background.
That's a pretty wide-reaching portfolio of jobs, isn't it? You've certainly you've got a lot of experience there.
Well, I hope so. Well, and for the last year, I've worked at Federated Farmers in a principal advisor role, and I've been largely focused on the Resource Management Act and the other freshwater reforms that have been implemented over the last 3 or 4 years, and some of the issues those are bringing for farmers.
So, Paul, what do you see as the big challenges facing farming at the moment?
Well, when I look at agriculture in New Zealand, I think it's a bit of a tale of two stories. We've got, if you go outside of New Zealand, if you go to the rest of the world, you look at our wine, our beef, our dairy, our fruit exports, and it's just all a good story. The markets around the world are growing, and they want our product. As people get wealthier, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and even in Europe and North America, there's huge demand for everything we do. And actually, they're pretty happy with how we do it. But if we look at home, if we look at our own borders, there's the farmer confidence is at record lows. It's hard for farmers to get bank finance. And we're starting to see production plateau in the dairy sector for the last 10 years, and it's fallen in sheep and beef in the last 20. So I think there is a few red lights flashing at home. And so for me, I think the next 10 years, we're at a bit of a point where we say, is it time to push pause on some of where we've gone in the last 10 years? We've done a lot to improve the environmental footprint. We've done a lot to put some rules around some things that maybe didn't have rules in the past. But is it a future for our country to have these sectors that are worth so much of our exports? Over 60% of New Zealand's exports from those core primary sectors, and over 80% from, if you're including forestry and fisheries as well. Is it a recipe for success for New Zealand to have those sectors essentially in recession for the next 10 years? And that's what's forecast to happen if we go forward with policies like essential freshwater and He Waka Eke Noa. So those are the big concerns for me. I think there is opportunities for New Zealand and for rural communities to grow and to really deliver for New Zealand and the world. But there's some big red flashing lights around how much appetite there is for investment at the moment.
And as you rightly point out, the farmers are exhausted, aren't they? They've got so much on their plates that it's overwhelming.
Yeah, so I think for me the priorities at the moment are there is a number of irritants, you might want to call them, that actually do really need addressing. The freshwater rules that have come in on winter grazing, on wetlands, they just aren't workable, and we need to see change. The stock exclusion map is another one. And it's good to see National come out today and acknowledge that, to say that some of those regulations do need to go. But also I think we need to start looking at what are the policies that can allow farmers to grow and prosper. And so there might be things like the use of technologies that can reduce your emissions and reduce your water footprint, but we just can't use them in New Zealand yet because the regulations aren't sorted. Or it might be the GMO technologies. We've got grasses that have been developed that can do these things, and we need to have an honest conversation around where our priorities lie, because if we do want to achieve these environmental goals, well, then we'll need the access to technologies. Or it might be the water storage. I think there's been a tendency to associate water storage with the Canterbury Plains and with dairy production, but actually there's huge opportunities all across New Zealand for water storage, and that can mean that if you're a farmer in Northland or Bay of Plenty or Hawke's Bay, that might mean opportunities to improve your production and your family's prosperity without increasing the environmental footprint. So I think we do need to have some forward-looking policy conversations as well over the next decade to make sure we move farmers forward.
And just briefly, National announced it's getting back to farming, the policy. Quick thoughts on that?
That National's come out and said farmers need to get back to farming. Then some of these policies that are unworkable do need a reset, and we do need to be backing rural communities to get New Zealand through the current economic crisis. We've got the biggest current account deficit on record. We've got inflation at 7%, and we're heading into recession. So it is time to say, these are the big wheels of the economy, and we need to get them turning. It's 80% of our exports. We've got, as I said, the biggest current account deficit on record. So we need to do something here. So I think without going into the individual detail of what National's announced, I think the message is the right one. One I would touch on is the live animal exports. And it's naturally one that some people might react badly to, but I'd just say this is a $400 million export industry. We're exporting animals with gold standard animal welfare, and we see very little injuries or deaths on these ships. And just to have that industry turned off overnight for political reasons is the kind of decision which I think sends shockwaves through the confidence for farmers and banks to invest. And so I think whether or not they get the right perception or reception, on that one from urban New Zealand, I think that is one that we need to stand behind as a rural community and say, look, it's not right to turn off these big export earners just for political reasons.